Parker Schnabel had been chasing gold his entire life, yet nothing could have prepared him for what was waiting beneath the earth that day. This wasn't just another claim, nor a pocket of scattered flakes to add to his tally. This was something far beyond his wildest dreams. As heavy machinery thundered around him and the ground quivered under steel tracks and relentless digging, Parker froze in place. Something deep inside him stirred an instinct sharper than any scanner. They weren't breaking through ordinary ground anymore. Something older, hidden, and carefully concealed for centuries was about to emerge. A faint glint flickered in the dirt, so subtle it could have been overlooked. But to Parker, time itself seemed to pause. Dust hung in the air like smoke. The growl of engines faded, and all he could hear was the pounding rhythm of his heart. He barked an order to his crew, his voice cutting through the noise. The scanners were checked, recalibrated, and run again. What they revealed sent a ripple of disbelief through the entire team. Beneath their boots wasn't just empty space, it was a shaft filled with something extraordinary. At first, the sonar had teased them with odd readings, pockets of air, strange outlines, and depths that seemed unnatural for this ground. The crew suspected it might be another collapsed mine shaft or the ghost of some long-forgotten dig. But the deeper the drills pressed, the stranger it became. The earth resisted, clinging to its secrets as if unwilling to surrender. Then came the reflection, metallic, undeniable, and unlike anything they had seen before. Parker snatched a flashlight and moved toward the exposed opening. The beam sliced through swirling haze, guiding him into the narrow, freshly revealed passage. Each cautious step felt like a march through time itself. The walls were reinforced not by nature, but by man timbers and beams blackened with age, carved with symbols and markings that didn't resemble anything local. This wasn't an accident of geology. This was deliberate. This was hidden. The deeper they moved, the more the tunnel revealed its secrets. Strange symbols began to appear, etched into the wood and carved into the stone. They weren't random scratches from tools or miners killing time. These markings were deliberate cryptic patterns, unfamiliar signs, and designs that seemed to carry meaning lost to history. The air inside grew heavier, damp and stale, pressing against their lungs. Mud clung to their boots, water trickled down cracks in the rock, and the narrow walls seemed to close in tighter with every step. Yet none of it could distract them from what gleamed ahead. At first it was faint, a shimmer so small it could be mistaken for a trick of the light. But the closer they dug, the stronger it became. And then, like a spark bursting into flame, the chamber revealed itself. The earth fell away, exposing piles of coins, their edges catching the flashlight beams and sending golden flashes across the walls. Nuggets of pure gold spilled from the soil. Artifacts half buried began to take shape: chalices, ornaments, and tools crafted with extraordinary detail. The space seemed to glow, as if the treasure itself had been waiting to be seen. The crew fell silent. Men who had spent years in the dirt, hardened by long days and endless labor, could only stare in disbelief. What lay before them was not a miner's lucky find. This was a hidden vault, carefully constructed and intentionally concealed. Whoever had placed this treasure here wanted it to remain undiscovered, and had gone to unimaginable lengths to make sure of it. Ancient carvings stretched across the chamber walls, their meanings cloaked in mystery. Crosses, geometric shapes, and symbols that whispered of secret orders and forgotten societies stared back at them. For every answer the chamber provided, it raised 10 new questions. Who had buried this fortune? Why had it been hidden so carefully? And what warnings were hidden in the markings that seemed to cover every surface? But it wasn't just mystery that lurked in the darkness. Danger waited too. As they pressed deeper into the chamber, the truth became clear. The place was booby-trapped. Subtle mechanisms creaked within the walls. Hidden pits opened under careless steps, and sections of stone seemed ready to collapse with the pull of a lever. Centuries-old defenses still waited, eager to claim anyone reckless enough to trespass. Yet Parker pressed forward. He had been chasing gold all his life, but this was something greater: history, mystery, and wealth all fused into one. Every artifact uncovered, every coin revealed, every golden glimmer pulled from the shadows only fueled his determination to uncover the full truth of the shaft. As more dirt and rock were cleared away, the chamber revealed a scale none of them had expected. What first appeared to be a simple cavity widened into a full underground vault, stone blocks carefully fitted together, reinforced beams still clinging to life centuries after they were placed. This was no accident of nature. It was engineered, constructed with a precision that spoke of purpose and planning. Then came the breakthrough that silenced even the most skeptical crewmen. A mound of soil gave way, spilling a cascade of gold across the chamber floor. Coins clattered together, nuggets rolled through the dirt, and light from their flashlights bounced off the metal in dazzling bursts. For a few breathless seconds, no one moved. It was as though they had stepped into a dream too impossible to be real. Before them lay order, not chaos stacks of coins, neatly placed bars, and artifacts that looked ceremonial, almost sacred. Parker reached for a coin, turning it in his gloved hand. The weight was unmistakable. The shine, even under centuries of dust, was pure and undeniable. But the markings were strange. Some carried crosses. Others bore emblems and designs that didn't match any modern or even known historical mint. These weren't random pieces of wealth. They were part of a story. The walls reinforced that idea. Carvings stretched in careful arrangements heralded crests, strange scripts, and cryptic codes. Some looked European, others seemed older, alien even, their meanings lost in time. Parker's hand traced the lines slowly, the weight of the discovery sinking in. They hadn't just stumbled on treasure, they had stepped into a message left by the past. A narrative carved in stone and gold. But as wonder grew, so did danger. The ground groaned beneath their boots. Traps lurked in the shadows, and the chamber seemed designed to test intruders. A hidden pit nearly swallowed one man whole before the team caught him. Rusted mechanisms screeched faintly as they disturbed the wrong stones, threatening to bring the ceiling down. Each close call reminded them this treasure was never meant to be found. Still, Parker pressed onward, his instincts sharper than ever. His crew followed his lead, carefully documenting every artifact, every marking, every piece of evidence. This wasn't just a payday, it was history uncovered, a secret brought into the light after centuries of silence. And yet, with every step forward, the sense of unfinished business grew stronger. The sonar readings had hinted at something more, deeper voids untouched. And if this chamber was only the beginning, then what lay ahead could dwarf even this unimaginable fine dot. It was Parker who noticed it first. A section of stone at the far wall didn't look quite right. The blocks were smaller, too carefully arranged, as if hiding something rather than supporting the chamber. His pulse quickened as he studied the alignment of the carvings. Patterns hinted at more subtle cues deliberately placed for sharp eyes to notice. With steady hands and quiet urgency, he ordered the crew to begin removing the stones one at a time. Each scrape of metal against rock rang through the chamber, sharp with anticipation. When the last block shifted free, stale air poured out in a slow breath, heavy and untouched for centuries. A narrow passage stretched into darkness. The crew hesitated, exchanging uneasy glances, but Parker pressed forward. Flashlight beam cut in a path through the gloom. The tunnel was tight, forcing them to move slowly, shoulders scraping damp stone. The smell of earth and age filled their lungs, and every sound, every shuffle of boots, every rattle of gear echoed loudly in the confined space. Then, in the distance, it appeared again, that unmistakable glimmer of gold. Not scattered coins this time, but a concentrated, overwhelming shine. As the tunnel opened into a second chamber, gasps echoed around Parker. Stacked neatly within recesses cut into the stone walls were rows upon rows of solid gold bars. The sheer quantity was staggering. Each bar was thick, heavy, and gleamed with a luster that centuries had failed to dull. Markings covered their surfaces, symbols, weights, and strange emblems that suggested they belonged not to miners, but to rulers, dynasties, or perhaps secretive orders that had spanned across continents. But the gold was not alone. This chamber, even more than the first, was organized like a vault. Artifacts had been placed alongside the bar's ceremonial tools, intricate carvings, sealed jars holding manuscripts, and wooden chests bound with iron bands. When one of the jars was carefully opened, it revealed scrolls. Their writing faded but still intact. Symbols and characters unfamiliar to the crew danced across the fragile pages, hinting at knowledge long buried and perhaps deliberately hidden. Parker's hands trembled as he ran his fingers over one of the gold bars. It was real. It was pure. And it was worth a fortune, and estimated $115 million in gold alone. Yet he could not tear his eyes from the carvings and the manuscripts. The true treasure, he realized, might not be the wealth stacked before them, but the story it told. These secrets it guarded. Told. These secrets it guarded. The deeper they studied the walls, the clearer it became. The carvings here were not simple decorations. They were connected maps, codes, and sequences of symbols that resembled constellations or encrypted instructions. It was as though this chamber was not just a vault, but a message left behind for those who could find it, and perhaps solve it. For a moment, silence ruled the chamber. The crew stood in awe. their flashlights sweeping over stacks of gold that could change the life of every man present. Yet Parker wasn't smiling. His eyes weren't fixed on the wealth alone. He was staring at the walls, at the strange, deliberate carvings that seemed to whisper warnings through the shadows. Something about them felt unfinished. The patterns weren't randomly aligned, almost like directions. Arrows merged into constellations, geometric figures overlapped like pieces of a puzzle. Parker stepped back, scanning the full wall from corner to corner. His gut told him this chamber wasn't the end. It was a waypoint, a clue left to guide whoever dared to come this far. "Run the scanners again," he ordered, his voice low but steady. The hum of equipment filled the silence as the crew recalibrated. The readouts came back slowly, but when the image formed, Parker felt the hair on the back of his neck rise. Beneath them, deeper still, another hollow space pulsed faintly on the screen. The realization sank in like a weight. What they had uncovered so far was only the surface. The true heart of this hidden labyrinth lay even further underground, and if the traps in the first chamber had nearly claimed lives, what waited below would be far worse. Whoever built this had been determined that no one should ever reach its final secret. Still, Parker felt no hesitation. The gold stacked around him, the manuscripts and relics, were staggering beyond belief, but they weren't enough. His whole life had been driven by the pursuit of more, and now that instinct blazed like fire. If there was a deeper vault, he was going to find it. The crew shifted nervously, glancing at one another in the dim light. Some whispered that they should stop, take what they'd found, and leave before the tunnels claimed them. Others argued that history demanded they push on, that discoveries like this happened once in 1,000 lifetimes. Parker listened, then raised his hand, cutting through the debate. "We didn't come this far to stop halfway," he said, his voice echoing off the ancient stone. "This isn't just about gold anymore. This is about the truth, and whatever's down there, we're going to find it." The chamber seemed to respond, a low rumble shivering through the walls as if the earth itself had heard his words. Dust trickled from the ceiling, the old beams groaning under the weight of centuries. Parker tightened his grip on the flashlight, his jaw set with determination. Ahead lay darkness, danger, and the unknown, but also the possibility of unlocking one of the greatest mysteries hidden beneath the earth. And so, with the golden glow of unimaginable wealth behind him and the promise of deeper secrets ahead, Parker Schnabel stepped toward the tunnel that would lead them further into the shadows of history. The next hours felt like days. Every movement was deliberate, every choice weighed against the possibility of disaster. The chamber above was overflowing with riches beyond imagination, but Parker's focus had narrowed to a single point: the passage below. The sonar images haunted him, ghostly outlines of yet another hidden cavity waiting to be reached. They gathered their gear in tense silence lights, ropes, reinforced supports, and emergency oxygen. The air was already thin, heavy with centuries of dust. One mistake, one collapse, and the earth would swallow them whole. Still, Parker's eyes burned with the same fire they had since the first glint of gold. Nothing, not fear, not danger, not even the threat of death could pull him away now. Before they descended, Parker paused, running his hand over the carvings once more. Symbols spiraled across the walls, telling a story too fragmented to fully understand. Crosses intertwined with stars, circles overlapped with cryptic letters. Some appeared to be warnings, others instructions. One set of markings looked eerily like a map, pointing not just deeper into the ground, but outward toward something greater, perhaps even beyond Oak Island itself. The thought chilled him, but it also pushed him forward. If this treasure connected to something larger, a hidden order, an ancient network, then what lay below might not only be gold, it could be knowledge, secrets capable of rewriting history itself. The descent began. Ropes creaked as they lowered themselves into the newly revealed shaft, flashlights piercing the suffocating black. The air was cooler here, sharper, as though untouched by human lungs for centuries. Their boots landed on damp stone, the ground uneven and fractured. Immediately, the danger made itself known. A stone gave way under one man's foot, triggering a groan in the wall. A cascade of pebbles fell, followed by a grinding sound deep within the structure. Everyone froze, breaths held, until the noise faded into silence. Parker raised a hand, signaling them to move slower, louder. This wasn't just exploration anymore, it was survival. As they pressed forward, the tunnel widened. Strange wooden supports, blackened with rot, leaned at precarious angles. Embedded within them were more carvings, deeper, more elaborate than those above. Some depicted battles, others rituals. and one in particular showed a figure holding what looked like a golden staff, surrounded by followers kneeling in reverence. The meaning was lost, but the implication was clear. This was not mere treasure storage. This was sacred. And then, the beam of Parker's flashlight swept across something that made his heart seize. Ahead, the tunnel ended not in rubble, but in another massive stone door, sealed tight and carved from a single slab. Across its surface, symbols glimmered faintly in the light. Some were the same as those in the chambers above, but others were new, sharper, more ominous, like warnings carved by hands that truly meant them. Parker exhaled slowly. This was it, the final barrier. Beyond this door lay the heart of the mystery, the culmination of centuries of secrecy. Whether it held more gold, forbidden knowledge, or something far darker, he couldn't yet know. But one thing was certain. Whatever waited behind that stone had been hidden for a reason, and Parker Schnabel was about to open it. For long minutes, the crew studied the massive stone barrier, their flashlights skimming across its surface. The slab was ancient, yet solid. Its edges fitted so tightly not even air seemed able to pass through. Symbols danced across the surface. Some looked like stars, others like weapons, and others still like strange runes that no one recognized. A few markings, however, were unmistakable, warnings. This door wasn't meant to be open, one crewman muttered, his voice tight with unease. Parker didn't flinch, his gloved hands pressed against the cold surface, tracing the grooves. It wasn't just a door, it was a message. The builders had gone to extremes to protect whatever lay beyond. Yet to Parker, the challenge was irresistible. He had come too far. There was no turning back. With careful precision, they rigged tools and pulleys, working slowly to shift the colossal stone. Hours dragged on as metal groaned and ropes strained, sweat mixing with dust on their faces. Every creak threatened collapse. Then, at last, the door shuddered, shifted, and gave way with a deafening rumble. A blast of stale air swept out, carrying with it the smell of centuries sealed away. Flashlights cut through the darkness, beams trembling as they entered the chamber. What they saw was unlike anything before. The room stretched wider than the others, its ceiling arched and reinforced with beams of dark, ancient wood, and there in the center stood a towering chest, bound with iron and studded with strange engravings. Around it, ranged in a circle, were golden relics, crowns, chalices, swords, and statues, each more magnificent than the last. Their shine was almost blinding, reflecting across the walls like fire. But the most shocking discovery wasn't the gold. It was what lay at the far end of the chamber. Stone pedestals held sealed jars and crates carefully lined and untouched. Within one open container, wrapped in brittle cloth, were scrolls, hundreds of them, some written in languages none of the crew recognized, others in Latin, Greek, and even markings resembling maps of the stars. These were not treasures of wealth. These were treasures of knowledge. One scroll was carefully unrolled, revealing diagrams of strange machinery, drawings of celestial alignments, and coded passages that hinted at secret societies guarding forbidden truths. Parker's heart raced not just from the fortune glittering around him, but from the realization that this discovery was bigger than money. It was history, power, secrets that someone, long ago, had wanted buried forever. The crew stood frozen, torn between awe and fear. They had stumbled into something beyond their comprehension, a treasure vault that could shake the foundations of history if revealed to the world. Parker exhaled slowly, his flashlight beam lingering on the chest in the center. $115 million in gold was staggering, but what they had uncovered here was priceless. And yet, a single thought echoed in his mind. This might still not be the end. As the crew moved deeper into the newly revealed chamber, the weight of silence pressed down on them. Their boots crunched softly against the uneven stone floor, every step echoing in the cavernous space. Dust particles floated in the flashlight beams, dancing like tiny spirits awakened from centuries of slumber. Near the chest, Parker crouched, brushing high. Gloved fingers along the iron bindings. The engravings were deliberate lines, symbols, and emblems that didn't resemble ordinary markings. They looked more like codes, perhaps even a language long forgotten. Beside him, one of the crew muttered, "This doesn't look like treasure storage. It looks ritualistic." He was right. The arrangement of gold and relics wasn't random. Crowns pointed toward the chest like guardians. Chalices sat evenly spaced, as though part of some ancient ceremony. Even the weapons, swords, and daggers were angled with purpose, their tips aligned with strange symbols carved into the floor. Then came the sound, a faint drip, 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 echoing from somewhere deeper in the chamber. The crew swung their lights toward the back wall. There, half hidden behind layers of moss and stone, was a narrow opening so small it could easily be missed. It wasn't on the scans. Another passage, Parker whispered, his voice almost reverent. But this passage was different. The opening was framed with carvings that sent a chill down everyone's spine. Serpents, coiled around crosses, suns eclipsed by moons, and faces carved in jagged detail, their eyes hollow and watching. At the center was one final marking, a spiral leading inward, as though inviting or warning anyone who dared to enter. The crew exchanged nervous glances. The treasure they had already uncovered was beyond imagination. Yet this hidden tunnel suggested the possibility of something even greater or far more dangerous. Parker's instincts told him they stood on the edge of an even deeper mystery, one that connected not only to the gold, but also to the scrolls, the symbols, and the centuries of secrecy surrounding this place. His pulse quickened as he realized that this shaft, this chamber, this treasure, might just be a fraction of something far larger. The silence thickened as everyone waited for his decision. Did they press forward into the darkness, or seal the chamber and leave with the unimaginable wealth they had already uncovered? Parker stood slowly, eyes fixed on the narrow passage. He didn't say a word, but his expression told the crew everything they weren't finished here. Not yet, because beyond that dark opening, hidden in the shadows of the earth, lay the next chapter of a story that had been waiting centuries to be told. The chamber was heavy with anticipation. No one spoke for several minutes, the silence broken only by the low hum of their equipment and the rhythmic dripping from the darkness beyond. Every man felt the tension, the thrill of discovery weighed against the threat of danger. Parker adjusted his helmet light, its beam cutting across the opening. The narrow tunnel wasn't natural. It had been carved with precision. The stone walls smooth and reinforced with ancient timber beams now warped with age. Whoever built it had intended it to last for centuries. "All right," Parker finally said, his voice steady but low. "We're going in." A ripple of unease moved through the crew. They had already uncovered a fortune, more than enough to secure their futures. But Parker's determination was unshakable. He wasn't just chasing gold anymore. He was chasing answers. The first steps into the passage were suffocating. The walls pressed close, forcing them into single file. Their lights revealed carvings at shoulder-height rows of symbols, some repeating, others shifting in form, as if telling a story through cryptic pictures. Serpents wound around suns, ships battled waves, and crowned figures raised weapons high. As they pressed deeper, the air grew colder. A strange draft whispered through the tunnel, carrying with it the scent of damp earth and something faintly metallic like rust, or perhaps blood. Halfway down the passage, one of the crew stopped suddenly. "Wait, look." His flashlight caught the glint of thin wires stretched across the floor. They weren't random debris. They were traps. Ancient mechanisms, rusted but still intact, had been hidden in the shadows. Weighted stones balanced above the beams, sharpened stakes embedded in the walls, and pressure plates barely visible beneath layers of dust. It was a labyrinth designed not just to hide treasure, but to kill anyone reckless enough to seek it. The crew carefully disarmed what they could, marking the floor with chalk to guide their way back. Every step forward felt like a gamble, but the lure of discovery pulled them onward. Finally, the tunnel widened, opening into a second chamber. Their light swept across the walls, revealing murals unlike anything they had seen before. The paintings depicted voyages across vast oceans, maps marked with unfamiliar coastlines, and figures robed in symbols of power. At the center of it all was a recurring emblem, a circle split by a cross, surrounded by stars. And then they saw it. Against the far wall, half buried in sediment, was another structure, this one smaller, but sealed with the same iron-bound precision as the chest they had found earlier. The markings on it glimmered faintly in the light, as though etched with a different kind of metal. "Another vault," Parker whispered, his breath fogging in the cold air. But this vault was different. The symbols carved around it weren't warnings. They were instructions, intricate patterns, numbers, and alignments with stars. It wasn't meant to scare intruders away. It was meant to be opened by the right person. The crew fell into stunned silence. They weren't just miners anymore. They were explorers on the edge of a revelation. And as Parker placed his hand on the cold surface of the second vault, one thought burned through his mind. This discovery is only the beginning.